Tonight on KQED Newsroom, special guest Congressmember Katie Porter responds to the massive crude oil spill that's polluting the shores in Orange County. Plus, what's changing for California students and the public school system as the governor signs new bills into law. And we take in the view from a former military airfield turned national park in this week's edition of Something Beautiful. Coming to you from KQED headquarters in San Francisco this Friday, October 8th, 2021. Hello and welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm your host, Priya David Clemens. Let's kick off our show with a Friday 5, a look at some of the top news stories in California. Cleanup continues in Orange County following a pipeline rupture that spilled more than 125,000 gallons of crude oil into the ocean. The cause of the rupture has not yet been determined, although investigators suspect the pipeline may have been damaged by a passing ship's anchor.
When there's drilling, there will be spilling. I think we're going to be holding hearings, but I think the next step is we have to come up with a plan to not only stop new drilling, but to figure out how do we stop all drilling that's going on in California.
On Tuesday, a former Facebook employee testified in Congress that content on the social media platform damages users' emotional and physical safety. She said the tech giant has known this to be true for years, but chose to hide the results of its own studies. The whistleblower, Frances Haugen, said stronger regulation is essential.
This is not simply a matter of certain social media users being angry or unstable, or about one side being radicalized against the other. It is about Facebook choosing to grow at all costs, becoming an almost $1 trillion company by buying its profits with our safety.
Mask requirements could begin to ease in the Bay Area in the coming weeks, according to public health officials, as long as COVID-19 transmission rates stay low. However, National Guard teams have been deployed to assist at hospitals overwhelmed by COVID-19 patients in parts of Central California and the rural north, where case rates are 3 to 4 times higher than the state average. Tesla has been ordered by a federal jury to pay $137 million in damages to a former contractor who said he faced racist harassment on the job in form of verbal abuse and graffiti. Legal experts say the award may be the largest of its kind. 2 California researchers have won this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. The scientists at UCSF and Scripps Research discovered new receptors in touch and temperature. The research could lead to better treatments to reduce pain.
We don't go into this, at least most of us don't go into this thinking we're going to win prizes. We just want to do this for the thrill of discovering something. There is a time when you make a discovery where you're the only person on the planet, or at least you think you're the only person on the planet, who knows the answer to a particular question. And that's a really thrilling moment.
And that's this week's top stories. We'll have our political roundtable soon. But first, a conversation with Representative Katie Porter. Our special guest this evening has promised a congressional investigation into the Southern California oil spill. Orange County U.S. Representative Katie Porter is the chair of the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations for the House Committee on Natural Resources. In a tweet this week, she stated, "Big oil's offshore drilling puts the health of our communities, our local economies, and our planet at risk. Cleaning up this spill is not enough. We need to stop these disasters from happening in the first place. Hashtag no more offshore drilling." Congresswoman Katie Porter joins us now from Irvine. Representative, thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
Representative Porter, you've been known for using a whiteboard in congressional hearings, so here is your official welcome to KQED Newsroom. We made our very own whiteboard for you.
Wonderful, thank you. And I agree that we need to talk about the California waters and the federal waters.
So this is the case here. This is showing you that for the first 3 miles offshore, it's all California territory. And then after that, the federal government takes over and is responsible for everything that happens there, which is where the spill occurred. Now, according to the Associated Press, there are 23 oil and gas production facilities in those federal waters off the coast of California. Do you want to shut them all down?
Well, I think the first and foremost thing we need to do is make sure that we're not doing any new drilling. That is the absolute first step. And then we need to develop a plan to close these facilities down responsibly. We do not want to leave them out there abandoned without proper closing, without proper capping. We don't want to leave these pipelines in place where they could continue. So it's going to be a transition and a process, but it's a transition we should have begun long ago. And so I look forward under President Biden's leadership to moving in that direction quickly.
What do you think it's going to take to make it happen?
Well, I think there's two pieces. One of them is a broad piece about stopping subsidies for fossil fuel companies and putting clean energy on a level playing field. So, right now, for example, when oil companies drill on our federal public lands, and this is onshore I'm talking about, they pay a royalty rate that has not been updated in 100 years. Wow. Fossil fuel companies have a lot of special tax breaks that incentivize this kind of exploratory drilling. And so I think there's a lot of good aspects in the president's Build Back Better Act and the reconciliation bill that would help put clean energy and green energy on a level playing field and help accelerate it. And that will begin to naturally produce this transition. At the same time, we need to deal with the fact that these rigs are there, the pipelines are there, and they continue to create a risk. We have too often seen oil companies and gas companies do extractive activity, pollute the area, contaminate our environment and air, and then walk away and not properly cap and control and close down, whether it's wells, mines, rigs. So that's a really important part of this as well, is making sure that taxpayers are not footing the bill when these oil and gas companies do stop drilling.
Governor Newsom has also talked about the need to transition the workforce that's involved with oil and gas drilling. You're chairing the House committee that's going to investigate this oil spill. Can you tell us about the timeline for that investigation?
We're looking to begin immediately. We've already started, and we're going to hopefully have our first hearing here within the next week to 10 days. And we're hoping to do that hearing in California near the site of the spill and give the community an opportunity to talk about what this is doing to them. What are the harms that we're seeing to our wildlife, to our economy, to tourism, to recreation? We want to put the community really at the center, the community that's being hurt at the center of this discussion, and also give the community information about how the cleanup is proceeding and keep them up to date. And then we'll begin to look at the investigation and the cause. There are two federal agencies that are primarily responsible when there is a federal oil spill. And of course, our United States Coast Guard is on the ground in charge of the Unified Command. And one of the things the Coast Guard has made clear that I think Governor Newsom made very clear, and I just want to emphasize, is that we will identify the responsible party and we will hold them accountable. We're not taking the responsible party's word for why this happened, or anyone, we're not letting companies point fingers at each other. There will be an independent, fact-based, publicly transparent investigation.
There's also a bill to permanently ban oil and gas drilling off the coast of California, Oregon, and Washington. This was put together by Congressmember Jared Huffman and Senator Dianne Feinstein. This is in that $3.5 trillion infrastructure package, which is currently under negotiation in D.C. Has there been any movement on the negotiation for that package or the smaller $1 trillion package this week?
Yep. So the bill, the West Coast Protection Act, is part of the president's budget reconciliation package, the Build Back Better Act. And that's why it's so important that we pass that. The infrastructure package has already passed the Senate, and it would focus primarily on traditional infrastructure, roads and bridges. And, it's not going to move us forward into dealing with the clean energy and green energy transition that we need to make, both for our planet, but also for our economy, where green energy jobs now outnumber significantly traditional fossil fuel jobs here in California. So that's where that $3.5 trillion Build Back Better Act comes. Negotiations are ongoing. I met with the president this week, and he was very reassuring that he is in conversations, particularly with Senators Manchin and Sinema, making sure that we get this bill over the finish line.
Have you heard any movement on the numbers between that $3.5 trillion that was originally presented, the $1.5 trillion that was floated by Manchin?
I suspect we're going to land somewhere in between that. And I think what's most important for viewers to know is the question is not just the number, because we're paying for this bill. The question is what programs are going to get cut. And I think that's where we need to be really transparent with the public. A lot of the things in that bill, including the climate provisions, including the provisions to hold oil and gas companies accountable, childcare, elder care, healthcare, these are really needed things in our community. And so I think I would encourage people to really understand what's in the bill and speak up to their representatives that these programs are important to them.
You're one of the few single mothers of young kids in Congress, and you're the first, I think, to be elected. And you're pushing for more financial support for mothers and families. I want to share a clip of a video you recorded just last month in which you went to a grocery store to show what it's like to be on a pretty tight food budget. So let's take a look at that.
All right, so our total receipt here came to $30.83. If we were shopping for a pregnant mom with 2 little kids at home, we would only have had $26. So like I said, we're about $4 over, and this is with the expanded amount from the American Rescue Plan. Come October, if Congress doesn't act, this family would have to put virtually everything back, because their weekly allowance would only be a few dollars.
What more do you think needs to be done to support families, particularly mothers and children?
Well, there are really 3 major policies in the president's agenda that I think are working together really, really important. One of them is continuing the child tax credit, not only the expansion of that for most Americans, but also delivering it monthly. Grocery bills and child care bills don't come once a year. They come every month. And we've made that, we've done that in the American Rescue Plan. We need to make that permanent. The second big thing I would identify is paid family leave, making sure that parents can stay in the workforce, including people who are caring for seniors, making sure they can stay in the workforce. If they have to exit, that they have a roadway to come back and we don't have that labor market disruption. We've seen with COVID exactly how painful that is for our economy. And the third piece, and one that's really near and dear to me, is support for the child care. In more than half of states, including right here in California, 1 year of preschool tuition costs more than 1 year of in-state college tuition. And parents don't have 18 years to save up for preschool or infant care. So we're pushing, and we have in the budget reconciliation bill, that no family would pay more than 7% of its income for childcare, and the lowest income families wouldn't pay anything at all. And that's not just about helping kids. It's not just about helping parents. It's about helping businesses. It's about our entire economy. We just can't have that strong, stable, globally competitive economy that we need for our future if we're not doing the same amount to help working parents and to help employers have those workers that our competitor nations are doing.
You've been a strong advocate for consumer protections. And as part of that work, you've said you would end arbitration clauses if you could. And we've just seen an example this week of a case in which a contractor did not have an arbitration agreement with his employer, Tesla, and won a jury award of $137 million due to racist harassment on the worksite. What do you think about this case?
I think it's incredibly important that people who are victims are able to get their day in court, and that is a public and transparent process. That is inherent in what we mean when we say the rule of law. We are a country that makes laws based on cases that are decided in prior cases. And if all that's happening behind closed doors in arbitration, not only is it an injustice in most cases to the victim who doesn't receive an appropriate award and isn't able to navigate that process, but it also doesn't create the public accountability that our court system is designed to create.
What else is on your agenda? What else is top of mind for you these days?
Well, one of the things I'm working on is making sure that as we deliver programs to the American people, there's so much back and forth, as you know, as we talked about what the number is going to be in this bill and what kinds of things are going to be in it. We also have to really pay attention to whether or not these programs are designed to get out the door quickly and efficiently and make good use of taxpayer dollars. And we saw, I think, with COVID response, some programs that worked quite well, the stimulus checks, the expanded child tax credit, and we saw some programs that had significant problems and still have significant problems, like rental assistance. So I'm really trying to make sure that we're building in programs that are universal and that are urgent in terms of how they're designed to be delivered.
Representative Katie Porter from Irvine, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Access to education was a legislative focus this week as Governor Newsom signed 3 new bills into law. One bill provides pre-kindergarten for all 4-year-olds in California. Another expands dual immersion language programs. And a third creates new college savings accounts for more than 3.5 million students. These bills are part of the governor's California Comeback Plan, which will give schools the highest level of state funding in California history. Joining us now to discuss these education bills and all of this week's political happenings in the Golden State are Politico senior writer Carla Marinucci and KQED politics and government reporter Guy Marzorati. Thank you both for being here. I see that you have dressed in fighting colors here, some Giants orange, and we've got Dodgers.
Yankee blue today, folks. I'm sorry.
All right, well, big game tonight, but we'll go back to politics for now. Let's start with education. So, Guy, when Governor Newsom signed these education bills into law, I really felt like I was hearing the culmination of some dreams that he's had for many, many years, especially pre-K, universal pre-K.
Absolutely, and we can trace that back to his inauguration in 2019 when his little kid just inadvertently ran across the stage. He made this a big part of his platform running for governor, and he's delivered on it. Look, billions of dollars to expand pre-K transitional kindergarten. This is the type of thing President Joe Biden and Democrats are trying to do on a nationwide level in Congress. To me, the issue here is going to be a workforce one, right? There could be as many as 15,000 more teachers needed to actually implement this in the next few years. Can the state train up and hire these teachers to make this plan a reality?
I mean, as the father of 4 young kids, Gavin Newsom has really used this issue, focused on it, appeared in local public schools to talk about it. I saw him surrounded by kids in Oakland on this one. It's something that obviously he's using this as part 2022. We're looking already at the campaign, going around the state, doing these victory tours and talking about education. That is a number one issue, not just K through 12, but talking about higher education as well. He was at Cal State Northridge this week, same thing, talking about $47 billion the state's going to put into higher education, making it easier for kids to transfer from community college to UCs, affordable housing. So on the education front, this is popular with voters. It's obviously popular with the Democratic legislature, and it's going to be a linchpin to his 2022 election campaign.
Well, you know, over these last few weeks, we are doing signing after signing after signing. Yeah. We hear the word unprecedented over and over again. Right. And he talked this week a little bit about why the state is able to put so many of these programs into place. So let's listen to that.
This last month, 40% of America's jobs came out of the state of California. We're the tentpole of the American job recovery. California, as a consequence, has enjoyed an $80 billion operating surplus, unprecedented in U.S. history.
And there's that word again, unprecedented. But, you know, education, housing, that we have poured more money in than has ever happened before. Carly, you were actually with the governor this morning at a press conference.
That's right. He was in Oakland talking about small businesses, bars, restaurants, extending some of those things that were given to them during the COVID pandemic, parklets, alcohol to go. But he also, in terms of the surplus, talked about Tesla, another big business issue, and why California is still a leader in tech. Really kind of pushed back on Elon Musk.
So let's just point out, Tesla has said that they are going to be moving their headquarters out of the state. They're going to be moving to Texas.
And in fact, Elon Musk tweeted that one of the reasons he's doing that is because Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez tweeted to him sort of an off-color tweet telling him to go and go out the door. An F you, essentially. Newsom said, look, is that really a reason to leave? I get that kind of tweet just about every hour. But he also said California, one of the reasons California has a surplus that you mentioned, that $80 billion, is because it has invested in companies like Tesla. It has given them all kinds of incentives to come here. And the regulatory environment, he said, is the one that has helped keep them there and is now keeping a lot of unicorns, venture capitalists, et cetera. You've heard these arguments before from him, but the fact is he pushed back on Tesla, saying that he admires Elon Musk, has known him for years. But the fact is Tesla really isn't leaving California. It still has 35,000 employees in Fremont and in the state as a whole. It's not cutting back. It's bulking that up because its production is going so well. It's not leasing or leaving its Palo Alto headquarters.
Right, it's actually growing.
It's actually growing. It just opened another facility in Northrop, out in the Central Valley this year. So the fact is, a lot of this is PR by Elon Musk.
Right, and long term, this is an IPO surplus, right? This is tech companies succeeding, their wealthy heads getting money through the income tax. And this is the success story of a progressive tax system that California has. Again, something that perhaps Democrats will copy on a nationwide level, but it's really the story of California's tax system delivering this huge surplus that we have.
Let's talk about another story where there have been billions of dollars being thrown around, which is EDD, the state's employment development agency. And that has been plagued with all kinds of problems, particularly through COVID. There's a concern that maybe up to $31 billion has been scammed from that agency. Yeah. And there was some reform work that took place on that this week. Guy, are these going to address the issues?
I mean, I have to put this under too little too late, right? Some of these ideas that Newsom is signing into law, making sure, double checking that EDD recipients are not state prisoners, making sure that Social Security numbers are not being sent through the mail, are things that just seem like common sense that weren't done, and I guess are now being paid forward to the next, huge unemployment wave we might have whenever that is. Unfortunately, it's too little too late for the billions that are already out the door.
Yeah, and when we know that $11 billion has been documented in fraudulent claims, and there's something like another $19 billion out there that are being investigated. This was an issue that was used against Gavin Newsom effectively by the Republicans before Larry Elder came in.
You feel effectively? You feel like it's stuck?
I feel like
nothing's stuck.
I think at this point, they were able to say, get someone to answer the damn phone at the EDD. That was one of the problems that Newsom never really answered. These bills, 5 of them go toward that, accountability issue, and that's something. It's not going to go away when it comes to Republicans asking questions about what's wrong with EDD.
All right. There was also some reform when it came to prison sentencing. The governor signed a bill ending mandatory minimum sentencing for some drug-related crimes. So, Guy, can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this goes back to laws that were put in place kind of in our tough on crime era in California that really restricted the ability of judges to have leeway on how they treated non-violent drug offenders. Basically, in a lot of cases, they had to send folks to jail and prison. This changes that. I think it's part of this monumental wave we've seen in the legislature over the past decade rewriting those tough on crime laws. I do wonder, though, the long-term political consequence and the pendulum, is it swinging? We saw on this particular vote when it came to undoing these mandatory sentences, a lot of moderate Democrats in swing states, places like Orange County, they wanted nothing to do with supporting this bill. And whether or not these fears of crime have any correlation to statistics, it's definitely an issue on the mind of these swing state representatives going in next year.
That's because this crime issue is front and center with voters, I think. This is a kitchen table issue. When they're watching those videos out there on Twitter of people coming in, robbing stores, etc., any Democrat is going to be a little bit concerned about reducing sentences, but at the same time, there's a lot of criminal justice advocates out there who are saying this is one area where the system really does need to be reformed. We have sent a lot of young men, particularly African young men of color, into the prison system, and it has just created more and more problems. They've actually learned more about criminal enterprises there than they would with educational programs or reform programs. So this could be a reform that
it'll also be interesting to see what happens in the DA races in the coming years, right? Because there have been some significant social justice changes there.
Right, and I was going to say, for all the fears that maybe the pendulum on crime is swinging and that voters are going to buck this more progressive direction, we haven't seen that definitively happen at the ballot box, right? This was on the ballot in 2020. Voters wanted to keep these reforms that California has put in place. I mean, we could see this tested in DA recalls, but we haven't seen that clear signal from voters wanting a pushback in the other direction. Maybe it'll happen in 2022.
All right, let's move to plastics. Plastics. All right. So there have been some bills that passed, some others died, but there are a few that passed when it comes to reforming how we use plastic in the state. So I want to first listen to a recycler who's talking about how hard it is to deal with the plastics that we consume.
What you see behind me is a portion of the plastics that come into this recycling plant every day. These are the ones that we can recycle. But there are other plastics that we can't recycle. Plastic bags and other low quality, sometimes called junk plastics. There aren't good markets for those. They're difficult to sort and separate. Some of them are very small, like little spoons and plastic forks, or little plastic tops or little wraps around the tops of bottles.
Or little ketchup packets.
This is one area that, this bill signed by Gavin Newsom is going to have a direct impact on consumers. You want, those ketchup packets, you want the fork, knife, you're going to have to ask for it from now on. So many of them are being thrown away. And this is an issue, another issue when it comes to the environment and climate change people are looking at. That is the idea of misleading labeling on some of these plastics that suggested they were recyclable when they weren't. That was one thing that the bills wanted to deal with. And then the issue of, as he said, just so much waste when it comes to these recyclable materials.
Guy, anything to add on plastics before we move on?
I mean, it's great to hear about Ketchup Gate. I will say this also is an issue that's going to continue in 2022. There's already a ballot measure that's moved forward to eliminate more single-use plastic, so expect to hear more about this next year. All right.
Guy, there was a momnibus bill that was signed this week. Can you tell us more about what was in that?
Right. I mean, the problem this is getting at is really stark. Moms and newborns in California of color, black moms, black infants, are 2 times, 3 times more likely to die than the state average. So this is what this is really trying to do, is get more information on this, when, why, where this is happening, and then more direct assistance to moms, whether that's getting rid of welfare to work requirements or even expanding Medicaid for moms after they give birth.
All right. Well, thank you both for being here today. It's been great to have you on. Great to talk with you. Carla Marinucci with Politico, the woman whose newsletter I wake up to every morning. Guy Marzorati with KQED, the voice I love to hear on the radio.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being here. This week's look at something beautiful is an area near the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a place I like to walk, and maybe you do too. Crissy Field was a former military airfield that's been converted since 2001 into a national park. And this weekend, you can watch as the Blue Angels perform high-flying stunts as part of Fleet Week. And that's the end of our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. If you want to get a look behind the scenes, then please hang out with us online too. KQED Newsroom is on Twitter and Facebook, or email us at knr@kqed.org. You can reach me on Twitter at Priya D. Clemens. We'll see you right back here next Friday night. Have a great weekend.